We're live. Everybody, welcome to the pre-show. This is the beginning. We got a few minutes to get warmed up before we go right into the normal show on television. If you're online, you're the only people seeing us now. We're about to get started, so thanks for joining.
He made sure everyone could see us by waving.
Well, I was warming up.
That's good.
Little jumping jack.
Well, you gotta get your exercise in.
We usually dance. Today, I don't think we're going to dance.
I don't think we're doing the dance. No.
So, yes, apparently Wikipedia is accurate, according to the International Business Times.
Right.
But, you know, I think it's funny that people have to compare it to Encyclopedia Britannica in order to verify its authenticity.
I'll tell you what, it's one of the funniest things I think about my parents, invested in this encyclopedia back when we were kids, and they bought it for us when we were kids in Brooklyn, and then we moved to Saudi Arabia. And
they're like
we moved to Qatar, and then we moved back to New Jersey, and these people had to take the entire encyclopedia set from country to country to country.
More shipping it around.
Exactly. And I'm like, Wikipedia is at least a little more user-friendly. Or mover-friendly, I should say.
Right. You can also comment on how you miss the Encyclopedia Britannica because you really want to look up and see what's going on currently in Yugoslavia.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Exactly. That's the other thing that's crazy. It's like, okay, so you get your encyclopedia. It's really good, you think, for when you get it. Things change tomorrow.
Yeah, you can't change.
Now what?
It's true. It's true.
No, Ahmed, what exactly is this that you've got?
Right. Speaking of not Wikipedia, but like Wikipedia, user-generated content. Obviously, everybody has their platform or portal. This is actually Al Jazeera's Shadik. I translated it into English for our purpose, but this means contribute.
It's an internal portal.
Yeah, it's basically a portal where people around the world, and specifically recently in the Middle East, have been sending us tons of videos and photos. We'll play this one just because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Arabic or with the slogan irhal, or the word irhal, which basically means leave. This is not playing, which is not good, but essentially this video is in Yemen. But it's not
and so it looks like it's like some kids basically lying on the ground in a. Is that the pattern of the word?
Yeah, it's a shame we can't play it because basically what it was, I will get it to play, but basically they spell out the word, as you can see, these kids right here. They spell out the word irhal. There you go. And so this is in Yemen, and they're basically telling. It's a pretty clear message. But it's interesting that, kids are getting involved. Because I remember when we did the show the other day, when Osama bin Laden was killed, we showed a picture of kids celebrating his death in America, holding a poster saying, I forget what it said.
But it was basically little kids that were seeming to be happy about it. But here's another example. And, this, I think it's a little more positive in the sense that you've got these kids feeling, really empowered, that they can speak out against the leadership.
Yeah.
I doubt this would have been conceivable 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Didn't you also show a video on an earlier show of women marching with these kids on the side?
Exactly, that's a great example. So this was another video from Yemen where they've been having women-only marches. A lot of the marches are gender separated, most of them from what we've understood thus far. And there was this amazing march of all these women, and then you look at the thing and you see like these people standing around on the edges, and it's the children of the mothers creating a human shield so that the mothers could march. I mean,
and we saw it also in Yemen as well, I think. It wasn't just in...
No, that was Yemen.
Oh, it was Yemen.
That was Yemen. Yeah.
But I feel like... Say it again?
I think that last one we saw was Yemen, the one with the women.
Right.
Yeah.
And you would know because you grew up in Kuwait and you lived in Kuwait for so long that the word irhal means leave. Yeah. Irhal, and that was one of the best videos. You'd love this because you're a musician. Wow. But there was this one video, there were a lot of videos of Tahrir Square when Egypt was undergoing its 18 days of revolution. And there was a guitar, and there was a song that they made around the word irhal.
Yeah.
And it was just so good because it was, a guitar, which is more of a Western instrument, not the oud, which are the lute. And they were singing in Arabic, but they were singing with this kind of rock beat. So, I think that's just, highlighting how young people in the Arab world are
the world
getting involved.
If you ever get a chance to pull up the helmets and the hats that people made, the makeshift ones,
they made helmets and hats.
Oh my gosh, for all kinds of weird stuff on their heads.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hilarious.
You mean weirder than the royal wedding?
Oh.
I always said I wasn't going to bring up royal wedding on this program. Like, we're not going to talk about it. Were you there?
Didn't you bring up the royal wedding?
I was. No, I think my invite got lost.
No, but guess what he did do?
I was the first person. I changed Kate Middleton's name in Wikipedia to Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge. I was waiting with my finger on the button.
On the button.
As soon as the preacher said, "I now pronounce you man and wife," click, I did it.
You're more powerful than whoever. Who was it that names them? Is it
The
the
Queen.
Archbishop? Oh, the Queen gave it as a
Queen.
gift. It was her wedding
No, she
present.
named them the Duke. What is
Duke
their
of
name?
Cambridge, yeah.
It was her
Cambridge.
birthday gift.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
the
to name them.
wedding gift to them.
Encyclopedia
To name
Britannica
Give them
can't do
the
that.
title of the
No,
Duchess.
they can't.
Duke and Duchess
Too
of
slow.
Cambridge.
That's the truth.
But see, they couldn't have done that without you pressing it. No one would
There you
know.
go.
Maybe that's why they did it. You never know.
Go figure,
She
go
made a
figure.
phone call to you,
So
didn't she?
it's going to be interesting. There's a
I'm
couple
sorry.
of things that we're going to be
Why
talking
would
about
you be
today
Get that button
that I
ready.
think are really interesting. One of them is a revolutionary, or, well, let's not say revolutionary, the ongoing politics, internal dynamics in Cuba.
Right.
And the thing that is interesting is, you know, as we were just talking about the globalization of this revolutionary idea,
Right.
and we basically saw people protesting in different parts of the Middle East holding up Che Guevara signs.
Right.
Right? Well, now, today we're going to get a chance to look at what's going on and talk to some people about what's happening in Cuba now with this idea of cyber mercenaries and the Cuban government accusing people of cyber warfare.
You know, Cuba is one of the only countries, like, you know, in Egypt, their internet penetration was at, 18, and in Tunisia, 22. So most countries, like, will try and target people who use the internet for, what was it called, dissidents or whatever?
Dissidents, yeah.
Essentially. But in Cuba, they just don't make it available.
Yeah,
Like
well,
in
Cuba, it's like 3% of the people have in the internet access, period.
So I always say, people always ask me, is Wikipedia censored in North Korea?
Right.
And I say, no. The one guy with the computer can look at whatever he wants. You know?
He can edit whatever he wants.
All he
But
pleases.
Derek, you have to note that before the internet era got this whole access thing, you know, before the access in Cuba, there were complaints by the Castro government to the United States of actual physical mercenaries. So it's like this is a
it's like the
cyber
next step.
mercenary.
It's taking it to basically, it's the old trope moved to a new era.
Flavor.
But what's happening in Cuba is
Cyber flavor.
they're immediately
Cyber. There you
correlating
go.
anybody who uses the internet because of how inaccessible it is to being under some sort of
What's their
U.S.
usage
government
again?
operated fund.
Do you know what their percentage usage
It's
is?
3%.
It's
3%.
not less?
No, it's 3% is what we've got.
We
And,
have a
and
map,
it's also
which
so
maybe
funny because it's like, it costs like $5-7 an hour to get online.
Yeah.
And the average income is $20 a month.
Yeah.
So there's a whole process that people go by just to get online. I mean,
See, relative to the Middle East, that's really gross. That's like 22 and 3.
Yeah.
There's a huge
well, this is one of the things I want to get into a little bit more today. We've mentioned it before, but this idea of, you know, it's a digital world, but most of the world is still not
There's
digitized.
still
Hi, I'm Derek Ashong, and you are now in The Stream, a social media community with its own daily TV show. We are bringing you the stories that are ongoing, global, and sourced from social media. Today, why Egyptians are turning off their TVs and tuning in to YouTube. And Cuba's government claims it's in the midst of a cyber war, but less than 3% of its people are online. Joining us today on the couch, as always, our digital producer, Ahmed Shihab Eldin. Also joining us is Jamie Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia that anyone can edit. And we have Sarah Sayeed. She is the head of oneblue.org. Thank you both so much for joining us. Before we get into today's events, I just want to know from Ahmed, what have people been saying online?
Sure, Derek. Let's start with a tweet from Judy Brophy. She's asking us if we've seen Lupe Fiasco's new political video. Now, we're bringing this up just to highlight why we're introducing this, is because we've seen after Osama bin Laden's death that there's been kind of a peak, or Obama's polls have gone up. And so we just want to play this video because he's publicly, Lupe Fiasco, in this song called Words I've Never Said, he's publicly saying that he's not going to vote for Obama.
Terror is a bunch of rules, just a poor excuse for you to use up all your bullets. How much money does it take to really make a full clip? 9/11 building 7, did they really pull it? And people supposed to be telling us the truth. Limbaugh is a racist, Glenn Beck is a racist. Gaza Strip was getting bombed, Obama didn't say. That's why I ain't vote for him. Next one either. I'm a part of the problem.
So there you heard him say, that's
Yeah.
why I am not going to vote for
That's
him
why I
next
vote for
one
him.
either.
You know what's funny is I actually interviewed him. I talked to him on the radio on
Right.
Saturday,
Right.
and he was speaking exactly to that same video, that same point.
Yeah, it's very interesting because Lupe Fiasco has been using QR codes and a lot of social media tools in order to not only publicize his music, but also just connect with people on a more intimate level. Another tweet that we got from a friend of the show, Kate Gardner, is about RenRen. And RenRen is China's Facebook. And this tweet says that they've raised $740 million in IPO as their stock is soaring. So it's 40%. And just quickly, for those of you who are not familiar with RenRen, this is their website. And as you can see, they've adopted not only Facebook's colors and concepts, as you can see with the light blue, but RenRen means everyone in Chinese. And they have over 100 million users. Now remember, you can share stories with the Stream community. Just tweet us at AJStream. This show is all about us listening to what you are talking about.
Hi, I'm Trisha Wong, and I use social media to listen to the world, and I'm in the stream.
Now, Jimmy, Wikipedia is effectively 10 years old now. Congratulations to
Yep.
that. A lot of things have been going on. We were talking in the pre-show about the ability to update it so quickly. Osama bin Laden was big news this week. What happened on Wikipedia with that?
Well, what was interesting, of course, on Wikipedia, anytime news is breaking, it gets updated very, very quickly on Wikipedia. But of course, when Osama bin Laden died, there was the official announcement from Obama. But then for about an hour before that, it was kind of leaking out here and there. And so in Wikipedia, where his entry had been edited, it was only being edited maybe a couple times a day. Beforehand, you see 25th, 28th, it didn't get edited much. And then there was a huge explosion of activity that started. And this guy here, Kyle Loves You, amateur photographer, he was the first person to actually update in Wikipedia, but he didn't have a source because it had just been kind of rumored online. So that got reverted very quickly, went back and forth for a little while until finally the New York Times ran something, then we had a good source.
So what you mean by that is basically someone updates it, but because it's not sourced, it reverts back to the original posting without their update.
Lots of people were, people
kept
monitoring
doing
things.
it,
They kept going back and forth and having a discussion about, well, should we run this, should we not run it? In part because it was being mentioned on television, but there were no online sources, so there was a little bit of a tussle about it. But that's that's the way the Wikipedians are, and this kind of activity is going on, a real beehive activity all around the world. This is the Arabic version of the page, same thing, all around the world. In all the different languages, people would be watching TV and reading news sources and updating Wikipedia in real time.
Well, so, it's interesting because Wikipedia works basically based on the user contribution. And I asked a few people if they would submit questions about what they wanted to ask you. And this was my favorite, the first one that jumped up, which was, Jimbo, if you could look at my screen, Jimbo, why do people work for free? So tell us.
Well, I think nobody works for free. If it's work, somebody's got to pay me to do it, really. What people do for free is they have fun. They do interesting things. They do things that are intellectually stimulating. You get to meet fun people that you like or don't like, but that you have to share intellectual interests. I mean, this is true for all kinds of social media, for blogging, for editing Wikipedia. Certainly, if we didn't make it fun and interesting, no, nobody would do it for free. It's ridiculous.
Now, Sarah, I want to get your thoughts on this because we're talking about an increasingly globalized world, but again, I think internet penetration worldwide is only about 30%. That's significant. Big jump from a decade ago, but that means 70% of the world is not online. What does it mean for tools like Wikipedia that are telling the history by the people who are able to have access? Then you have the 70% who don't.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It shapes your worldview just because, just like in the historic times, history books were written by people in power. So now you're going to find a lot of, obviously, the cultural domination is going to be in the countries that do have internet access. So the voices that couldn't be heard can only start to get louder when tools like Wikipedia are made available. So I think it's going to be a slow process.
That's really interesting. Now, Ahmed, I see you've been checking up what people have been saying online, and it looks like you were getting some cool comments as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in Wikipedia. One guy even said that he wanted to thank you because when he's at work, he uses Wikipedia all the time. So he thanked you for that. But Ryan Craigs is asking, what's your take on net neutrality?
Net neutrality. Well, I think it's a very complicated topic, so I try to stay away from making any really strong statements about net neutrality myself. I'm actually more concerned in that vein with the whole apps environment, where while we're worried about all these things about net neutrality, hypothetically, what if the phone company and the cable companies do this or that? Meanwhile, in the very real world, we're getting increasingly locked down computers, where increasingly locked down devices, where nothing goes on your iPad unless Apple says it's okay. That's very different from the old computer world, and that is that choke point of control that I do think we should keep an eye on.
And now, this is another interesting idea, is one thing we saw in the news that I would love to get your insights onto, this idea of a Hamas-Fatah reconciliation. And here you've got an issue where, you know, aside from Hamas and Fatah, the entire conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians means that you've got one piece of land, and you've got two very distinct narratives about what's happening there. Who are the arbiters of truth for Wikipedia when people are speaking about Israel and Palestine?
So for us, a big part of what we try to do, we have what we call neutral point of view. We try to be as neutral as possible, which means what we want to do is we don't take sides on any issue. We simply try to present what other people have said, what reliable sources have said. So we wouldn't say this or that happened. We would say, well, Yasser Arafat said this, and Ariel Sharon responded with that, and then let people read that and understand it for themselves. It actually works reasonably well. I think there are a lot of people out there who, when you get away from traditional media where there's really incentives to sort of bicker and fight and create a drama, a lot of ordinary people are just like, I don't know, you know, it's a complicated story, and I want to hear all the sides and see if I can piece it together.
I just want to say that I think the challenge that you have there is keeping the news updated constantly, because another thing is now the question is people are asking whether Fatah is going to become more like Hamas or Hamas more like Fatah, and Israelis are afraid that there's going to be more attacks from the Hamas now. But you know, the question remains how fast can you update it? How can you keep it current?
Well, when we look at something like you know, the updates when Osama bin Laden died, it can be very, very fast. Now, of course, for more complicated and subtle issues, questions like what does the future hold, right? That's not breaking news, and that's not simple facts. It takes time for opinions to emerge, which we would document, sort of what the general views are. But it really, the thing about it is, it's really important for people to understand, it's not magic. It isn't a process where you just throw up a website and 1 million people show up and it all turns out okay. It takes really serious, thoughtful people with real kindness in their heart to say, let's try to get it right.
Yeah, I know Ahmed wanted to jump in.
Yeah, just quickly, with breaking news, Wikipedians are restricted, and it's just people who have accounts are able to edit breaking news. And I just want to correlate this. Is that true?
Well, very often. If it's something controversial or we know it's going to get a lot of traffic, we want to make sure that random people don't show up and basically put curse words in. Like
the Fatah-Hamas conflict, which we see right here. Sometimes stats can be confusing, but these really reveal something interesting. There have been 974 total revisions, as you can see right here. And it's interesting that this page was only created since 2006. Now, obviously, that brings a lot of interesting things to light. Why was there not a page before 2006?
Especially considering, wasn't the split between them in 2007?
You know, I couldn't speak directly to that, but I think it is fascinating to see how many changes have been made. Obviously, that's an ongoing situation. I actually want to move to another story that we've got that's coming out of the Arab world that is really intriguing. It's another way of looking at these changes that are happening in Arab society. No one can deny that Arabs have a sense of humor, but having a laugh at your leader's expense was not always the wisest move, especially on state-run TV. Now, in the midst of these revolutions and uprisings, Arabs are sharing their political satire on the open airwaves of YouTube. Ahmed, you've got a really amazing video that I'd love if you could share.
Yeah, I'm going to play this video and talk a little bit over it. It's titled Al-Rayis Bihayis, which basically means the president is high. As you can see, we're going to start it. He's trying to decide if he should leave or not. And he's blaming Ben Ali of Tunisia for this. And so, yes, Arabs do like their humor, but I'm going to fast forward a bit. As you can see on the placard, it says, Al-Rayis lil-abad, which means the leader forever, so to speak. And he's saying, even if you don't want me, I want you. And at the end, the most powerful image is he thinks this is the solution to the problems in Egypt. But you see that the hand comes in, the Egyptian people, and that word right there is ashab, which is the first word of the slogan that we've been hearing resonating across the Arab world, which is Ashab yurid isqat al-nizam, down with the regimes.
Down with the regimes, indeed. Well, earlier we had a chance to speak with Bashir Omran of the organization that made this particular video. It's called Kharabish, and they're out of Jordan. And let's hear what he had to say on this topic of their work.
We started first as a Jordanian local company. We had the dream of being a pan-Arabic platform. we did grow. We explored different markets. We have now offices in Saudi Arabia. We are starting a new one. We have in Dubai. We have operations in Iraq. We have operation office in Cairo. We have our own office in Tunisia.
Now, joining us actually from San Francisco is YouTube's news manager, Olivia Ma. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we've just been speaking a little bit about the power of YouTube to expand people's ability to communicate in places where you've got state-run media. Does YouTube see itself as having a responsibility when it comes to the way people use your tools?
Well, I think that what YouTube does in breaking news situations is it provides a platform. YouTube is really just a technological platform that allows people to upload videos. It can be anything from eyewitness breaking news footage to their opinions on the latest political situation. But YouTube sees itself as a platform, and our goal is to increase access to information around the world in any way that we can.
Okay, now you want to increase access to information, but what about in those places where information is tightly controlled? How are you able to operate in countries where the governments do not allow free media? Are you blocked in certain places?
Well, YouTube is a global platform. There are places where YouTube is not accessible or it's more difficult for people to access the site. But, we do everything we can to make YouTube available in as many countries as we possibly can. And we encourage users to upload videos from wherever they are to share information about what's happening on the ground. I think one of the most interesting things is that, even when there's difficulty getting online, people are really, really determined to tell their story. It's an innate human nature, I think, to be able to tell your perspective and share your thoughts on what's happening, around you. And what YouTube and other social media platforms have allowed people to do is have access to, a platform that allows them to speak to anybody. And the democratization of media through these platforms is really empowering to people who otherwise in the past may not have had much of a voice.
Olivia, I just want to jump in with a Wikipedia page because we have Mr. Wales here, and it's a page that's highlighting the censorship of YouTube. It's worth scrolling down. This is the page at the top. We're just going to scroll down to Libya, where just one anecdote worth mentioning. In 2010, in January, Libya was actually, YouTube was indefinitely blocked after it featured demonstrations. So now a year later, we're seeing renewed demonstrations. How do you get involved with that? How do you decide? Because we've seen Facebook shutting down certain pages. Does YouTube shut down certain channels?
That's actually not really my area of expertise. We have a whole policy team that's dedicated to sort of understanding how YouTube is being used in different countries. But, as I mentioned, YouTube does try and make sure that our site is accessible in as many countries as we possibly can. And what's most important to us is trying to provide that underlying technological infrastructure that allows people to, express their opinions and their views. So, we do have a policy team and they work on these issues. We're not the only site on the internet that obviously experiences these types of issues with governments. And it's something that is really important to Google and YouTube as a whole. So it's an interesting time for sure.
Sarah, I want to get your thoughts on this, and it's a point I raised earlier, but I want to come back to it because I think it's so important. I'm originally from Ghana, and in my hometown, nobody has a computer in their house. If you want to use one, you've got to go to an internet cafe and you've got to pay to use it. So when we're thinking about tools like YouTube, tools like Wikipedia that are seeming to liberate people, giving them a bigger voice, isn't it just a bigger voice to an already privileged class?
Well, just having my experience in the Middle East growing up over there, I remember the days when you never even dreamt of speaking against the government or a leader. It was just not done. And then I've, over the years, seen a lot of satire cartoons in print media. And now we've progressed to the point where we're using tools like YouTube and other platforms to get it out. And the digital age is such that you just cannot prevent information from getting out if it needs to. It's not like you have to go to a printing place and sort of go through the whole process. It's fast, it's mass, and it's just not avoidable. So I think it's all part of this whole move towards opening up these societies.
So now, in that issue of, fast news coming in, Olivia, what does YouTube do about breaking news? How do you handle when something new happens? What do you do?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So essentially, when a major news story occurs, we pretty much usually within an hour, within minutes, oftentimes, we'll start to see content coming in. During the Egypt protests, starting in late January, we were seeing hundreds of videos come into the site, and we've entered into a partnership with an organization called Storyful. This is a group of journalists who have started an organization that is purely dedicated to curating social media content around breaking news events. So it's, YouTube videos, it's Facebook posts, it's tweets, it's Flickr photos, it's pretty much any type of user-generated social media. And we've been working with them to curate sort of some of the most compelling videos that we get around various breaking news events. And that's not just, protests in the Middle East, but it's also the Japan earthquake. It's other types of extreme weather. It's really anything where you have an event that people feel compelled to sort of whip out their cell phone camera and document. And so we aggregate all of these videos on our YouTube News and Politics channel, which is called CitizenTube. It's youtube.com/CitizenTube. And we really point people towards that channel where they can see essentially an archive of videos around a particular news event. So it's there's so much content coming into YouTube all the time. We really want to give people one place where they can go to find, and dig deep and see a lot of this raw eyewitness footage.
Well, CitizenTube sounds like a really wonderful resource. And thank you so much, Olivia, for joining us and giving us these insights. We hope that you'll come back and spend a little more time with us in our post-show. But thank you again for joining us from San Francisco.
Great. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Okay. So don't forget, we're looking all the time for your take on these stories. And you can text us at the number on the screen right now. And remember, be sure to include your name so we can make sure we know who's talking to us.
Hi, I'm Trisha Wong, and I use social media to listen to the world, and I'm in the stream.
How does someone become a cyber mercenary? And why is Cuba claiming it's in the midst of a cyber war? This story is quite fascinating. In a nutshell, Cuban bloggers have been accused in a recent series of documentaries that have been released on television and online by the Cuban government that basically say that, hey, these people are working against the interest of the country. And it's very interesting. I want to show just a clip of one of these videos and let you see what a government-made video looks like.
Un pueblo tuvo cosas tan sagradas que defender, ni convicciones tan profundas por las cuales luchar. Nos acompaña la.
Now you can see, just as you watch, it's got a very patriotic music. You see the leader of the country there. And I just got to show this last clip, the flag with the beautiful Cuban sun right behind it. Now, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking propaganda is writ all over it.
Right.
Well, we're lucky that joining us now from Miami is someone who can give us a little bit of insight. His name is Felice Gorordo. He's the chair of Roots of Hope, which works to promote exchanges between young Cubans on and off the island. Felice, thank you so much for being with us. I want to ask a little bit about this particular story where the Cuban government is putting out these little documentary clips which are effectively charging that Cuban bloggers are cyber mercenaries, that they're working with the United States to undermine the Cuban government. Is there any truth to these allegations?
First of all, thank you for having me on the show and for putting a spotlight on what's happening in Cuba. I think what's absurd is that these private citizens who are taking huge risks to get their message out, to get online, defying all odds to get on the web, are being accused of these things. These are nothing more than individuals who are promoting the free access and free flow of information and communication. And it's unfortunate that under a totalitarian regime like Cuba, that's a threat to the regime.
I mean, Jimmy, you're a big proponent of the free and open access to information. What do you think is happening where regimes around the world seem to feel under pressure by that idea?
Well, I mean, there's no question that a lot of regimes really are under pressure by that idea because, if you maintain your rule by keeping people ignorant, or these days, keeping people ignorant is harder than ever before, but you can still keep them afraid to speak. And that's kind of the second phase of it. When we see this in China, it's not that people in China have never heard of the Nobel Peace Prize winner. They just know they're not supposed to talk about it too much. And that's kind of where we are today. The world has changed, and there's nothing to be done about that, and that's a really good thing. So I think it's it's really important. And you do see these kind of desperate remarks too. So if you say cyber warfare, I mean, that's a ludicrous thing to say when you're talking about a blogger saying, I don't really like this policy of the government. He's not hacking into computers and breaking their network.
And the situation in Cuba is quite extreme. Just to give some context, we mentioned earlier that less than 3% of islanders have access to the internet. If we compare that just with other news stories in the world right now, Bahrain, Iran, Tunisia, right here on this map, we see Cuba comes just after Egypt, and that's about 14% of the population with access to internet.
Well, I want to take a minute. We're going to continue with this story in our post segment, but Ahmed, I know that there's a lot of stuff that's been coming in from our community. Give us some more of what people have been saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about Wikipedia, one of which by Emma Stay Cool. Jimmy, this is for you. I'm wondering, how do you finance your organization?
Well, we're a charity. So the bulk of the money that runs Wikipedia is the small donations.
Right.
So every year in November, December, we throw up a banner and ask people to donate, and that gets the bulk of the money. We also have some foundation grants and some major donors, but the bulk of it is from all of you out there.
And with regards to misinformation, if we can have one more question in here from LSal92. She's asking, isn't letting random people update Wikipedia contributing to misinformation? Now, that goes against the entire concept. But
yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting question because it is people's first reaction when they first hear of Wikipedia. But if you really dig in and you see all the rules the community has and how passionate they are about getting it right, about looking for reliable sources, you realize, yeah, on the whole, there'll always be errors and everything. But on the whole, Wikipedia really does pretty good job.
Is it part of like media literacy and citizen journalism?
Well, I think it's really important. I mean, one of the most important things today for schools and for everybody to understand is where does your information come from? Is it good? Is it bad? How is it generated? We have everything today from high quality newspapers, tabloid newspapers, some crazy guy's blog. You've got Wikipedia, you've got Scientific Journal. It's all available, and you really need to learn how to assess it. And I mean, that's one of the most important things.
Let's see if we can grab one more comment.
Yeah, just one more comment. This is interesting. This is the guy who said, that he wanted me to tell you that he spends a lot of time on your site while he's at work. And I saw that you responded to him. And you actually told him, don't worry, I won't tell your boss that you're reading Wikipedia at work. But you could just create a page yourself.
Exactly. Well, tell the boss that he's educating himself with the power of citizen journalism.
Right.
Thank you guys all. Thank you, Felice. I hope that you'll stay with us. We want to talk to you a little bit more during our post show. Thank you so much, Jimmy, and thank you, Sarah. If you have a story to share with us, you can always tweet us directly. If you want to get a dialogue going with other stream viewers, check us out and use the hashtag #TellAlJazeera. Check us at stream.aljazeera.com. Stay tuned for the post show online. All right, we are here for the post show for our online community. This is where we have a chance to dive deeper into some of these issues, an exclusive thing that the TV folks don't get to participate in, but we're glad that you stayed. I want to go right back to this story of Cuba because it really trips me out. I mean, Cuba is a country that said they were having a revolution for the people, for the rights of the people, and yet we see it's almost like these ideologies shift over time.
Right.
What could be more reflective of the rights of the people than the people's ability to express themselves? Felice?
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And you hit the nail on the head. And that's what they hunger for. They hunger to be able to express themselves. You guys were pointing out the facts regarding internet penetration there. What's absurd is that cell phones were illegal only until up until a couple years ago. At the beginning of 2009, cell phone penetration was 3%. Today it's about 8%, which is significant, but still way behind the curve when you're looking at the Middle East, Africa, Southeast Asia, let alone Latin America.
And that was only a product of the illness of Castro, and so it was his brother, it was Fidel's brother Raul that allowed for the penetration of cell phones.
That's correct. That's correct. You know, I think Raul Castro did a cost-benefit analysis and realized that people were hungering for being able to connect on their cell phones, and so he gave them that ability. Now there's people demanding to be able to access the internet, and instead of like China giving unlimited access to the internet, but highly monitoring and censoring it, in Cuba they use a bottleneck theory or a strategy, and they try and restrict as much as possible for people to be able to access the internet. But even with that said, you have people like Giovanni Sanchez, bloggers, and others who are doing everything possible to be able to get online.
Now, Ahmed, I know you want to jump in. I want to give a little context for our viewers. Giovanni Sanchez is a prominent Cuban blogger. She was actually very well known outside of Cuba, but because only 3% of people can get online in Cuba, many people don't know who she is. Now with these documentaries, she's one of the main people they're claiming is a cyber mercenary. So now she's actually, it seems like her profile is rising on the island. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the Cuban government didn't really realize this, or maybe they did, but they've actually made her incredibly well known on the island now. And there are people who are hungry to get online and to read her blogs, just because now they know about her and what she's talking about. And she speaks to the people. She speaks to the bread and butter needs and criticisms of the people. She's not your traditional activist. She's not your traditional opposition leader. She's young. She's alternative. And she connects with the people.
Yeah, we're just looking at her Wikipedia page right now. She's 35. And so I want to ask about the correlation between all of this and what's happening in the Arab world, and not to always bring it back to the Arab world, but what I think is happening is perhaps the reason that in Cuba, the government's trying to demonize the internet is really just out of fear, as we've said. And my question is, in February, so right in the midst of when the Arab revolutions, started to pick up pace, we saw a fiber optic cable arrive via Venezuela. And my question to you, and maybe, I don't know if Jimmy or either of you want to comment, is what's the relevance of that? I mean, is that really going to change the situation on the ground, or do they still have control over who has access?
It's questionable. It's still up in the air. My assumption is that it'll probably be incredibly controlled if in fact they do connect. Right now, it's still up in the air. This is something that's been behind schedule and countlessly pushed back. And in addition to the fiber optic cable, there were going to be some historic layoffs, 500,000 to 1 million workers. And right around the same time as the uprisings throughout the Middle East, the Cuban government put that on hold as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
And the interesting thing, too, is that the internet is useful for freedom of expression and all this. It's also incredibly useful and practical for prosperity, for the economy, and things like this. So you kind of have a choice. This kind of exclusionary strategy, it drives your country straight into poverty, worse and worse and worse, until people will not tolerate it.
This is one of the most interesting things about the Cuban example, is the Cuban government has been saying that, they can't give people better internet access because of the embargo, because of economic conditions. What's their excuse now that Venezuela's putting in fiber optics?
Oh, I don't know about the fiber optics, but just going back to that point, I wanted to mention that the accusation by the Cuban government of mercenaries being present holds a very heavy sort of a criminal sort of punishment attached to it. And nothing's really changed. All this is doing is exposing the savvy or lack thereof of these governments, because they're just shifting gears from controlling people in more traditional media to now going to the cyber thing, accusing people of being mercenaries online. So they really haven't shifted. I looked up documents in the past where they've accused the Bush administration and Condoleezza Rice of sending mercenaries now. So the tone hasn't changed. It's just what's happening now is we're getting exposed now to how restrictive they're being, and it's unreasonable after a point.
There's something that is really interesting happening that I want to throw out, in that I think this is a generational issue to some degree. You've got members of an older generation that have been running things. You've got a new generation that's used to doing things differently, and they don't know how to control this new generation, and that's really fascinating. Now, that same new generation is commenting nonstop about what's happening right here. So, Ahmed, what are they talking about?
We want to just broaden it to Africa for a bit, because a lot of people have been bringing up, the issue of access not only to the internet, but access to actually these tools. So someone is asking, sorry, I got to move the paper. Is it possible for a person to write Wikipedia articles, Jimmy, about rural Africa without online references?
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, if you've got offline references and you're known and you're doing good work, the community will try to work with you. But it is one of the trickier things is there's tons and tons of places, tons and tons of things in the world about which there's not a whole lot of really good sources, and it makes it all that much harder. We are really interested in looking at those kinds of problems and trying to help solve them.
And then a quick segue into the other question for you is, will we see Wikipedia transform, this is from Axel the Poet, into a social networking or online tutoring kind of thing?
I don't think so, no. I mean, the thing is, Wikipedia, we like it the way it is, so it's an encyclopedia, not a social network.
I think the idea is to be able to share Wikipedia, or, you know what I mean, the content that you have.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine, people have proposed at various times in the past that for every Wikipedia entry, you could have a set of questions and answers to help you sort of make sure you read the article and understood. We've never really made much progress in thinking about that. It doesn't seem like a priority for us. There's enough work for us to do as it is.
I like it as it is. It's amazing. You look up a lot of things online, and the first thing that comes up is the Wikipedia entry. I want to jump back to the last comment that a person made, though, and I actually want to take this to Felice. You know, we saw back in the 1960s and 70s, Cuba actually sending a lot of people to Africa, not only to help with liberation movements, but also to do things like train people in medicine. Cuba has sent so many doctors around the world, it's absolutely mind-blowing. But it seems to be a situation now where, without access to modern-day technology, what is happening to the stature of Cuba as a nation and its ability to impact world affairs?
Yeah, what's crazy is that you have this highly educated population with one of, I think, the highest concentrations of doctors in any country in the world.
And one of the highest literacy rates.
Absolutely. And then you have these doctors actually turning in their white coats, if you will, for a taxi cab hat and a taxi or a BC taxi, because they can make more money that way, and because they can get access to tourists and tourist dollars. And it's just an upside down economy. And the government has, I think, recognized that as well. Fidel Castro himself said that the system is broken, and they've tried to put in certain reforms to be able to change that, but I don't think they go far enough. And I think only time will tell what happens with the revolution and how far they will need to go and open up to be able to meet the demands of their people.
You know, a friend of mine in Jamaica said to me once a few years ago that, you know, we all used to look at all these revolutions in the past and say, wow, those people really changed their societies, but that the revolutions of today will not happen with guns. These are revolutions of the mind.
Or information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things, one of the great advantages that I think Cuba has is that the language, Spanish language, has a massive amount of resources online, massive amount of things that people can there's a huge Spanish language Wikipedia, for example, and news sources from many different countries, such that no one there could plausibly claim that everything on the internet is a U.S. conspiracy against Cuba. No, it comes from all around the world in Spanish. You think about a country like Burma, on the other hand, where most of the people who speak the Myanmar language, I shouldn't say Burma, Myanmar, I always try to say both so I don't offend anybody. They're all in that one country, right? Yeah. And so even when they do get online, now they're trying to read the internet and there's nothing for them in their language. Yeah. And Cuba is really going to spark. I mean, once people, just for nothing else, you don't have to be a political activist to go, wow, the internet's awesome. I can read all about sports. You know, anything you want to know about is all on there. So there's going to be a huge pent-up demand as people get on there, and there's, YouTube videos, everything people want to do for fun, and they're going to go, why can't we look at this? This isn't hurting anything.
And Cuba's such a culturally powerful place, and as Felice was saying, so many educated people, like the Cubans I've met, are really on it. I feel like once they enter into the global dialogue, it's going to have really interesting impacts for a lot of people, not just for them.
The question is, what's it going to take? I mean, how long can they keep it going this way?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one last question for you on a personal note. Let's end on a personal note. When I first saw my Wikipedia entry page, apparently I have one, I was horrified and then had an instinct to want to change it. I know you've gotten some flack for editing your own Wikipedia page, so maybe you could talk a bit about that.
You didn't do yours?
No, of course not. Me, why would I? No,
but, in general, what we do, we recommend people not edit their own page. There's no hard and fast rule about it. If you see some small error, you can fix it. The main thing is if somebody is trying to put a page about themselves in Wikipedia and there's not third-party press coverage and things like that, it will get deleted, and it's kind of embarrassing.
But you didn't edit your page at all?
Years ago.
Years ago.
It's interesting.
Well, somebody, one of our people online asked, what's up with the AJ Stream Wikipedia?
Yeah, when are we going to have one?
Well, I looked at it, and you know what? I did a search in Google News because I'd gotten this question, and I was like, well, I got to break it to them gently. I did a search in Google News. You guys have hundreds of news articles about you. You should have a Wikipedia page.
Yes, we're out of time.
Let's do it.
One. Thanks, y'all, for joining us. We're going to be on Wikipedia. We'll see you tomorrow.
Great.